fracture. The moment fear took root and learned to grow quietly. The moment I realized strength could be a shield, but it could also be a prison. And so I kept smiling, because I didn't yet know how to ask for what I needed without feeling like I was asking for too much.
No one prepared me for the moment after the miracle. They told me about labor, about pain, about pushing, about the first cry that would change everything. They did not tell me about the silence that followed, or the mirror waiting quietly on the other side of birth. The first time I looked at myself afterward, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. My body felt empty and heavy at the same time. Loose skin rested where life had just lived. Stretch marks bloomed like stories written too quickly. Scars whispered of survival. My eyes looked older, tired in a way sleep alone could not fix. I touched my stomach, expecting it to disappear the way the baby had arrived. It didn't. It stayed, soft and unfamiliar, like proof that something had happened that could not be undone. I felt shock before I felt pride. Exhaustion wrapped itself around everything. It sat in my bones, blurred my thoughts, softened my edges. I cried without warning, over nothing, over everything. Tears came when I saw my body, when I felt distant from myself, when I wondered how something so miraculous could leave me feeling so lost. I loved my baby with a depth that surprised me, fierce, immediate, unconditional. But love did not erase the quiet grief rising in my chest. I was grateful and grieving, proud and disconnected. I had become a mother, but I didn't know where the woman had gone. Desire felt like a memory, not a feeling. Beauty felt like a story I used to believe in. My body no longer felt like something to be admired. It felt like something to recover from. I dressed for comfort, not confidence. I avoided mirrors, then punished myself by standing in front of them too long. I wondered if he noticed, if he saw the same things I did, the changes, the softness, the distance between who I was and who I now appeared to be. He was gentle, patient, careful, but even kindness can feel heavy when you are already questioning your worth. At night, while feeding the baby in the quiet hours, I asked myself questions I never said out loud. Am I still enough? Enough to be desired, enough to be chosen again, enough to be loved without comparison. There is a loneliness in postpartum that has nothing to do with being alone. It is the loneliness of living in a body you don't yet understand, carrying expectations you don't yet know how to meet. I wanted reassurance, but I also wanted proof that love could see past scars, proof that attraction could survive exhaustion, proof that I was more than what I had lost. But mostly, I wanted to recognize myself again. So I stood there, facing the stranger in the mirror, holding a baby who knew me better than I knew myself, caught between gratitude and doubt, between the woman I had been and the one I was becoming. And for the first time, the question felt heavier than ever. Am I still enough? This was the moment I realized that healing would not begin with my body, but with how I learned to see it. I never stopped loving him. If anything, my love grew deeper, quieter, steadier, rooted in shared nights and whispered plans. He was there in the exhaustion, in the early mornings, in the way life suddenly revolved around something smaller than both of us. He showed up. He stayed. And yet, somewhere inside me, doubt learned how to coexist with love. I would look at him and wonder what he truly saw. Did he see the woman he married, or the body that had changed? Did he see strength, or only survival? When his eyes rested on me, I searched his face for answers I was too afraid to ask. Every smile felt reassuring. Every pause felt suspicious.
I measured his love in glances and gestures, reading meaning into moments that were never meant to carry such weight. The fear of rejection was never spoken, but it was always present. It sat between us during quiet evenings. It hovered in the space where intimacy used to feel effortless. I wanted to reach for him, but fear held my hands still. I was afraid of confirming what I imagined, afraid that desire had faded and that love was now fueled only by commitment and responsibility. So I stayed silent. I told myself I was protecting us, protecting him from my insecurity, protecting myself from disappointment. I convinced myself that strength meant enduring quietly, loving without asking for reassurance. But silence has a way of growing into distance. Not physical distance, emotional. I laughed when he joked. I listened when he spoke. I supported him the way I always had. But I stopped sharing the parts of me that felt fragile. I stopped letting him see how deeply I questioned myself. I built a version of myself that looked okay on the outside and asked for nothing on the inside. Unshared emotions create walls you don't realize you're building. I missed him even when he was right beside me, missed the closeness we used to have, the kind that came from honesty, not just presence. I wanted him to reassure me, but I didn't know how to invite reassurance without feeling weak. So I loved him silently, carefully, from a distance I created without meaning to. The hardest truth was this: my fear wasn't rooted in anything he had done, it lived entirely within me. But love does not exist in isolation. When one heart pulls away in self-protection, the other feels it, even if it doesn't understand why. I wondered how much longer I could carry this alone, because loving him was easy, trusting myself was not. And in that quiet struggle, I learned that doubt doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how you love. The fear didn't stop after the first. If anything, it learned how to multiply. Once my body had changed, I could imagine it changing again and again. The thought of another pregnancy no longer felt like a simple dream. It felt like a question layered on top of another question, a future filled with more stretch, more softness, more letting go. I began to imagine the weight of 2, then 3. Not just children in my arms, but changes written deeper into my body. I wondered how much more I could give before there was nothing familiar left to recognize. Each imagined pregnancy felt like another step away from the woman I once was, another version of myself I might have to mourn. The fear grew quietly with each possibility. I feared that love might wear thin under repetition, that attraction might weaken with every transformation, that patience might fade as sacrifice piled up. I knew these thoughts were unfair, but fear rarely asks permission before it settles in. My body began to feel like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. With every imagined birth, expectations grew heavier. To be nurturing, to be strong, to bounce back, to carry life beautifully and recover gracefully, to remain desirable while giving endlessly. The world applauds mothers for their sacrifice, but rarely asks how much of themselves they are allowed to lose. I carried those expectations like another child. Some days I felt proud of my resilience. Other days I felt crushed beneath it. I wondered how many times a woman could rebuild herself before the rebuilding became too exhausting to begin again. Is there a limit to reinvention? I thought about my body not as it was, but as it would be, changed again, marked again. Would I still recognize myself after the second, after the third? Or would I become a collection of roles, mother, wife, caretaker, without a clear reflection of the woman underneath? The fear was not just about appearance. It was about identity, about whether I would still feel like me when so much of me had been given away, about whether love could stretch as far as my body was expected to. And still, I wanted more children. That truth complicated everything. Desire and fear stood side by side, holding hands. I wanted the life we were building, even as I worried about the cost. So I carried the weight of the future quietly. 2, then 3, each number heavier than the last, each possibility asking the same silent question. How many times can a woman break herself open and still feel whole? I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew this. No one teaches you how to prepare for the weight of becoming more while feeling like you are slowly disappearing.
There is a kind of pain that photographs cannot capture. After birth, everyone wants to see the happy moments, the tiny fingers, the first smiles, the perfect nursery. They want to celebrate the miracle. And I did. I still do. But alongside those moments exists a quieter, darker kind of trauma. One that hides in the spaces between applause, in the silence after, "How are you feeling?" is asked and quickly answered with, "I'm fine." I bled in ways no one could see. Not just physically, though that was exhausting enough. I bled from the inside, from the sudden weight of responsibility, from the grief of a body that felt like a stranger, from doubts that whispered, "Am I enough?" Society does not prepare you for this. In fact, society often refuses to acknowledge it. Postpartum pain is hidden behind smiles and soft lighting. It is masked by hashtags celebrating the bounce back, the glow, the effortless mother. But real motherhood often feels like survival, not performance. And when you tell people you are struggling, they offer platitudes. You'll feel like yourself again. It's temporary. You're strong. You can handle it. I wanted to scream that strength and survival are not the same, that resilience does not erase sorrow, that love for my child did not dissolve my fear, my grief, my quiet longing for my former self. Being told to bounce back while still bleeding inside is a cruelty wrapped in kindness. It suggests that pain must be hidden, that vulnerability must be silent, that transformation must be seamless. But it isn't. My body reminded me daily. My emotions reminded me constantly. Every mirror, every physical ache, every sleepless night whispered, "You are not the same." The loneliness of this unspoken truth is heavy. No one asks about the nights I cried holding my baby, or the times I felt disconnected from my own life. No one notices the scars under the surface, the ones sown from self-doubt and quiet fear. You are expected to love, to nurture, to smile, to endure, all while reconstructing your body, your identity, and your sense of belonging in the world. And yet, I carry it silently, because talking about it feels selfish, because fear of judgment is louder than the need to speak, because even when the world sees a mother, they do not always see a woman. This trauma, the invisible kind, is heavy, but it is real, and naming it is the first step toward reclaiming the pieces of yourself that feel lost. It is the moment you whisper to yourself, "My pain is valid. My grief is real. I am allowed to feel more than happiness." We celebrate new life endlessly, but we rarely honor the women who gave it, who survived it, who carry it long after the applause fades. And maybe it is time we do, because if we do not speak of it, who will know it even exists? For a long time, I believed that strength meant never trembling, never doubting, never showing cracks. I thought being strong was synonymous with perfection, holding everything together while silently shouldering every burden. But motherhood has taught me a different truth. Strength is not the absence of fear. It is not the absence of doubt, insecurity, or tears. Strength is standing up while trembling. Strength is asking for help while afraid of judgment.
Strength is naming your fears and still choosing to move forward. I began to see my vulnerability not as a weakness, but as a mirror of my humanity. The moments when I admitted to myself that I was scared, scared of my body, scared of rejection, scared of failing my children, were the moments I became stronger. Because it takes courage to feel fear and still hold love in your heart. It takes courage to wake up each day and care for someone else when you are still learning to care for yourself. I also realized that my fear did not isolate me. The silent suffering of women is everywhere. So many mothers look like they are managing effortlessly, but inside they are navigating storms similar to mine. They hide bruises that aren't visible, exhaustion that doesn't show in photographs, and insecurities that don't come with instructions on how to overcome them. Yet we survive, we endure, we love, and we carry on. Acknowledging fear became an act of rebellion against the impossible standards set for us. It taught me that I could embrace my imperfections and still be enough, that I could love my body even when it bore the marks of change, that I could love my husband even when I doubted my desirability, that I could love myself even when self-doubt whispered that I wasn't whole. Real strength, I learned, is messy, it is quiet, it is persistent, it is resilience wrapped in tears, laughter, and vulnerability. It is realizing that being afraid does not erase your value, it enhances it, because you confront life even when it terrifies you. And finally, I understood something crucial. Fear is not something to hide. It is a companion, a teacher, and sometimes a warning. By naming it, by allowing myself to feel it, I discovered the depth of my own capacity. I am not fearless, but I am courageous. I am not perfect, but I am whole. Strength is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to face it, to live with it, and to keep moving forward anyway. And in that, I found not just resilience, but freedom. There are words that live in your throat, words you practice in front of the mirror, words you whisper to yourself in the quiet hours, words that never leave your lips because saying them feels too vulnerable, too risky. I wish he knew how often I replayed those sentences in my mind. Do you still see me the way you did before? Do you still want me the way I want you? I wished he could hear the questions behind my smiles, the trembling behind my laughter, the quiet panic behind my calm. I wanted reassurance, not loudly, not desperately, but softly, naturally, without fear of shame. I wanted him to see me, really see me, the way he had before the pregnancies, before the stretch marks, before the scars. I wanted him to choose me every day, to choose me not just because I am his partner, not just because we share a life together, but because he still desires me, because he still finds me beautiful, because he still remembers the woman I was and chooses the woman I have become. I wanted love that goes deeper than skin, love that sees beyond softness or scars, beyond the changes I cannot control, love that recognizes the courage it takes to give life, to endure sleepless nights, to carry invisible burdens and still stand. I wanted him to see that the body may change, but the heart that loved him long before our children, that continues to love him now, remains steadfast. And I always hoped, that I could feel chosen again and again, not as a duty, not as an obligation, but as a deliberate, conscious decision he made in every glance, in every touch, in every quiet "I love you" that passes without fanfare. I wanted to know that desire and devotion can coexist, that love does not fade when bodies change or life becomes more complicated, that commitment and passion are not opposites, but companions. But I never spoke these words aloud. I was afraid that naming them would make me sound insecure, weak, or ungrateful. I feared that the simple act of asking would shatter the delicate balance we had, even though, in truth, asking might have brought us closer. So I carried the words silently, tucked between smiles, hidden behind hugs, whispering